Welcome to this fireside chat series where we bring leading CEOs and MDs and leaders to narrate the story and share the learning and success of building a great brand. So today we have got with us Mr. Mayuresh Raut, who is the co-founder and managing partner for Seafund. Very warm welcome, Mr. Mayuresh, in this fireside.
Thanks for having me.
So let's begin with a very pertinent question. If you look at the investment portfolio, if you look at the startup ecosystem right now in the country, okay. So means most of the startups are currently going through a phase of funding winter. Okay. So according to you, what are the most common challenges which are faced by startups during such circumstances, during such funding winter kind of phase, and how are they adopting to overcome these challenges?
Sure. So again, folks like us who've been around for a while, and this tribe is only growing. We face this phenomenon every few years, right? I mean, all asset classes have a life cycle, and every 5-7 years, you get a low after a bubble that bursts. So this time is no different. And most of the startup founders who are in this journey the second time, third time, they know what to do, right? But let me give you what our view is, right? So our view is in 2023, businesses with product market fit, positive economics, and strong leadership teams will raise capital, although it will be a new normal in terms of valuation, in terms of the capital that is injected, right? We believe the new normal is kind of set back 2-3 years back. I mean, what would be the prevalent numbers in 2019, 2020? We've kind of gotten set back to that. But there is a huge number of startups out there that have not really found the product market fit and have not created positive unit economics and have unresolved issues in their founding teams and leadership teams. These startups, in our view, and it's playing out in the market, will struggle to raise capital at any price. And most of them are looking at a dire future. More often than not, they'll fail. This has already started to happen because so much capital was raised in 2021 till about middle of 2022. It has taken a little longer for some startups to kind of see which side of the bread the butter is applied, right? But we think a lot of startups fall in this category, and we believe that a lot of them will get taken out, if not already, and there will be a lot of fire sales. Now, what are some of the savvier founders are doing, right? I mean, they have realized that the last 2-3 years were an anomaly, and whatever capital they raised a few months back, a year and a half back, was in terms of valuation, which was very forward-looking. The expectation was that these markets are awash with money, and they will continue to grow at this speed. And if in normal times, these startups would have taken 2-3 years to grow a certain X multiples. The expectation was, since we have had this crazy growth, they will take about a year or even lower. And the crazy multiples, startups going out and raising money every 6 months, every 9 months, was this eventuality will happen very soon. Now with the money tap being shut off, with the interest rates rising everywhere, that valuation, which was hoped that the startups will grow in 9 months, 12 months, is going to take probably 24 months, 26 months. And now startups are realizing that, so that is one eventuality they are facing. The second one is obviously with the US and Europe teetering in the brink of recession, or at least the sentiment being that they will fall into recession, a lot of the enterprise customers who were their buyers have shut down all non-discretionary spend. So that is the second whammy that is hitting these guys, that where they could grow 2x, 3x in these flooded markets is going to take much longer. So what is going to happen? Clearly, it's going to take them much longer to grow into that valuation. Investors are going to say, hey, if your business is not growing 3x, 4x, or whatever is the crazy multiple promised, and it's come half, 80%, 90% of that value, then why are you burning so much money? So the savvier founders are realizing that they can't have the same crazy burn that they had earlier. And obviously the biggest head that is rising on all the cap tables or all the employee data is the guys who are drawing these crazy salaries. So these are the heads that are getting chopped. So all startups are in rationalizing mode. They are cutting costs wherever it needs to go down. Investors like us are having discussions around what are the percentages your ARRs have gone down by, what are the burn multiples that you're operating at, and how best can you extend the runway at least for the next 18 to 24 months. Always, you would always want to be cautious on the higher extreme of the spectrum. Though by all possible accounts and word on the street, the US will avoid recession. India is doing phenomenally well, and Europe, according to the latest figures that came out last week, has just avoided recession. But this is basically what all founders and investors are, the topics around which discussions are being held these days.
Very good. So, according to you, how have regulatory changes and government initiatives influenced the funding landscape for startups in India? Has there been any impact from regulatory changes or government initiatives as well?
Huge changes. India was savvy enough to play the data game differently than the way the Chinese played and the Anglo-Saxon world played, right? We have gone down the path saying that all public goods will be public property. They will be available for all these players who have been licensed to get access to these, along the GDPR and the recent data laws that were presented in the parliament a couple of days back. And they will not reside in walled gardens, like your data with Amazon resides in Amazon, your data with Facebook resides with Facebook. So that what has enabled us to do is there are these huge initiatives that have been run in India ever since 2012. I mean, the best one initiative is the NPI, the payment gateway, right? But that has been backed up by ONDC, OCIN, the healthcare initiative, and these are all stacks that we are building out. And startups have been given access to all this data through APIs that the government has presented publicly, right? So this is a huge change, and obviously money will go wherever there are these ready-made platforms off of which huge startups can be built. That is one thing that India has done very smartly. Secondly, what has happened is structural reforms that have been sown over multi-political dispensations, right? Multi-decades are starting to bear fruit now, right? They're paving progress. India is touted to have at least $1 trillion of just the digital economy side in the next couple of years. So the economy is being regulated and formalized. Initiatives like GST, initiatives like FASTag are bringing a whole lot of data that was still unstructured and was not part of mainstream data wells, data pools, if you can, right? So all of us, all the startups have access to this. As if this was not enough, the government has passed a lot of initiatives. Other than the well-known numbers about India moving up the stack of ease to do business, and depending on who you ask, you may either agree with it or not. But some factual data which you just can't deny is some of the incentives and schemes that the government has rolled out, right? So as part of DPIIT, the Ministry of Commerce and the Industries Fund for Startups has almost $1 billion now that has been committed to about 100 investment funds, right? And so this is purely an effort to build up an ecosystem where local startups are backed by local money, right? For all practical purposes, a huge chunk of the money still flows from the US, and China has managed to grow up in local ecosystem of US before that. So initiatives like this are going to help build up a local set of investors who will back local startups. The 3-year tax exemption that was granted to eligible startups can be used within the first 10 years of incorporation. Loss-making startups are being permitted to list on public bourses. 80% rebates in filing patents, 50% rebates in trademarks. Startups designated as fast-track firms get 90 days to wind up. So all these initiatives helps give they assure investors that even though India remains a difficult place to do business, these initiatives are some of the areas where investors are plowing money, right? So there is the huge PLI scheme, the huge focus on defense, the huge focus on India being the proven capital of the world, the huge focus on space, opening up access to ISRO and all space programs within the government. All this are avenues which investors are looking at actively, and these are across the spectrum in terms of having already attracting money, or they will attract floodgates of money in the next couple of years.
Very good. Very good. So, can you also identify specific industries or sectors where startups have done really well, have witnessed substantial growth despite the ongoing funding window?
See, again, we all investors are humans, right? And we are all driven by a psychological phenomenon that affect you and I, right? So FOMO, the fear of missing out, flavor of the month, flavor of the season, it affects all of that. So the decline in funding has been secular in terms of all sectors have been affected equally, but there are some that have been affected particularly badly. EdTech is an example, as you very well know. Most investors overlook the fact that the pandemic was not going to be the way the world was going to operate. That was just an aberration. We will eventually go back to a hybrid world. And that is really deeply affected. As in how the economic does, sectors like fintech and e-commerce get affected in terms of what is the disposable income available for investors, what is the sentiment, how are the markets driven, right? So most sectors have been affected, but there are a few that have managed to still stand up well, right? And at least in the medium to short term, the huge advantage that India has on SaaS, the few million odd folks like we who have been part of the outsourcing industry have reached a stage where we have worked with marquee Fortune 100, Fortune 50 companies with the CXOs, have done our hard yards and are moving over to the product side, working with the same set of customers, but building products. So at least in the short to near term, SaaS will still continue to attract a whole lot of money. Growth in newer verticals where startups will identify niches, that will play out very well. It is already playing out as we move to the second era of the SaaS startups. Increased sales efficiency due to the success of the ecosystem and global adoption of Indian products. This will all play into the SaaS advantages. Fintech is an area that clearly India has a huge lead over even mature markets like the US. I mean, we are used to the India stack for almost 7-8 years now. It's just last month that the US adopted a similar, they call it the Fed first stack. So they are, this is one of the areas where we've always spoken about India is a few years ahead in this technology or that product. This is one of the areas where India is a few years ahead of the Western world. And this will again play to our advantage. So fintech will also do pretty well. There is a growing underpenetrated middle class. And India has started to become at least a $5 trillion economy. When it depends on who you ask, but it's going to happen. And a huge number of people will start coming into the set of people who are people like you and I, which are the Swiggy, Amazon, Ola, Uber consuming class, right? So fintech will continue to do well. Rising number of micro transactions through these platforms that I mentioned, right? Ocken, the payment stack, B2B, B2C commerce. So e-commerce as a space again will continue to rise because it still is a 2-3 behemoth kind of a market, but there are huge untapped spaces. A lot of Bharat still has to be put into the digital economy space. And lastly, opportunities that will help business get streamlined and digitized, right? There are huge sectors which are just recently being pulled into the digital economy, right? So manufacturing still remains a huge behemoth that is still starting to wake up to these new age technologies. Logistics with the Bharatmala, the logistics platform, the GST, those are areas that will be pulled into the digital platform. The emerging EV ecosystem, which is a focus area for us at the fund, everything around that, we are just on the cusp of all these sectors exploding, and they have done pretty well even in this winter, and they will continue to attract a disproportionate amount of monies in the coming few years.
Very good. Very good. So, according to you, given the current scenario, how are the startups adapting their pitch, or maybe in some cases their business models, to align with the preferences of cautious investors, or maybe the demand of the market? Okay, so how are they transforming or changing their strategies to be relevant in the market?
So it depends on which stage the startups are, right? But let me start off with our portfolio and funds like us, right? So we, as I mentioned at the start of our conversation, we regularly have conversations with founders of our companies in our portfolios. And one important aspect we always continue to discuss is how have valuation multiples evolved? And one proxy is some of the bigger startups who have raised money, or public market companies that are in a similar space. So once you have an understanding of the extent to which the market segment has declined, The next step is to calibrate your goals in light of this newer valuation environment. A valuable exercise is to determine how is the ARR, the annual recurring revenue, changed with regards to your previous round valuation, and how do you strategize for that? When aiming for a target annual revenue, and some of the founders, smarter founders, are already doing all of this. So this is not just a one-way conversation where the investors are having these conversations. Some of the smarter conversations are coming. Founders are coming and talking about this. They're talking about how ARR targets have changed. How the attention to the burn multiples has to be a focus area, right? We prefer to have conversations around burn multiples or other efficiency metrics because when calibrating in response to changing market conditions, they provide a much more comprehensive assessment of your business. But when the fundraising landscape undergoes changes, requiring and acquiring capital becomes much more uncertain and costlier, right? So it becomes extremely crucial for founders to keep this in mind. This is as far as startups who have raised money and are in the midst of capturing more market share and are in the midst of between a couple of rounds. Very early stage, founders should start focusing, and they're already focusing on what is the problem they're solving, what is the product, and what the team. They should focus, and this is what we tell them, that they should focus on getting data from customer interactions, early product usage, what features are working, what are the features that provide no value. A/B test this down as much as possible, in addition to CAC and LTV and cohort analysis, right? I mean, if you're coming in very early and you're going to say, hey, I want a couple of $1 million, and this is how my business plan looks 2-3 years down the road, that just is an assumption that is not going to pan out. At this earlier stage, the focus is how can you demonstrate to me, is there a product market fit? And the only proxy for that is a customer buying it. Once you've got to some kind of a product market fit, the smarter founders are realizing that the focus is hugely on how soon can you turn EBITDA positive? Are you profitable at a unit economic level? And what is the pathway for you to at least get closer to some kind of a profitability? The crazy focus on scale at all costs, I think that's a conversation that will keep coming back. But most savvy investors and savvy founders will realize that building a sustainable enterprise is not just about scaling. It's about building efficient businesses by utilizing the least amount of capital.
Perfect. So can you also highlight a few of the unconventional marketing and branding strategies that startups are using to stand out in a crowded market, in the current crowded market?
See, there are certain things that have, we are all living in unprecedented times. There's prosperity, but it's going to a smaller chunk of people. But at the same time, most of us are much better off than our parents and our grandparents, right? But the only commodity that we don't have enough of is time, right? So whoever can help us address those issues are clearly standing out, right? So startups that are providing inclusive content, building communities, gamifying user engagement, increasing mind share, they clearly are standing apart, right? I mean, if a startup like MyGlam, FirstCry, who built out this whole huge cohort of parents, right? Not only do they sell these products, both MyGlam and FirstCry, but they also provide a huge amount of content that helps you figure your way about being a parent to a small kid, or in fashion, what works best for you, what are your individual requirements, right? Robinhood is a great example from the US. They tipped over to the other extreme, but they've gamified investing, right? So whoever is gamifying, whoever is building strong communities, they stand apart from the rest, right? In today's fast-paced world, consumers are always looking for faster, easier, and more convenient solutions. Rising incomes, busy schedules have further ramped up our everyday spending on conveniences like food delivery, ride hailing. So clear example of this is Clear Tax, what is known as Clear, right? No matter which geography you are, filing your taxes is a pain in the backside. These guys have simplified and made this phenomenon so seamless that they come with pre-filled data, and you could plug in your details and you can file your returns. I mean, that's a great example of giving convenience when all of us are pressed for time. Startups that are focusing on personalization, also they stand apart, right? customized recommendations, promotions, rewards are key to unlocking love and loyalty. People are getting inundated with content and product services, but guys who are giving service offerings and products that are very unique to you, right? I mean, the long tail, which was not being catered when we were in the offline world, all that is startups who are focusing on that works very well. I mean, all you have to do is see what a fantastic job Spotify does, right? All you have to do is listen to your favorites for a few number of times, iterations, and it's crazy the recommendations, how eerily in line with your interests are. I mean, that's a great example of that. And the last one I'll mention is brands today. I mean, the younger generation, obviously all of us want money to do things in life, but the millennials, the younger lot, they value experiences. They care a lot for environment. I mean, your kids, my kids are being taught they're digitally savvy, but we were also taught, but it was more dependent on what we were taught at home. It was not part of the curricula, but all these guys are taught about care for the environment. And as a direct result for that, they value brands who stand for something other than a good product, right? Patagonia is a great example. It's they publicly said, the founder has publicly said that all the money that the startup is garnering up, a huge chunk of that is going to be devoted to environmental causes. So the startups who are doing these 4 or 5 things will stand apart no matter how bad or good the market conditions are.
Very good. So we can see that various international investors are also eyeing towards the Indian market. Okay, so funds are, of course, the investors are cautious enough, but still funds are flowing in from the international investors as well. So according to what are the measures can startups take to attract basically not only the foreign investors, but also any investor and expand their global reach?
See, whether it's a foreign investor or a Indian investor, the color of the money doesn't matter, right? All investors care about, especially in venture capital, is we are all time-bound vehicles, and we have a certain time period within which we have to return money to our investors. Just like we are investors for startups, funds like us have investors, whether they be HNIs, family offices, institutional investors, right? As long as there is a view, right? A lot of funds operate on an investment thesis. A lot of funds operate on sector focus. Our view, at least, is that we do understand. We have a certain line of thinking of how technology will evolve, how economies will evolve 3, 4, 5 years down the road. But let nobody kid you. The founders understand the space, their industry far better than us. That is a good fallback option for investors. But as long as we get a fantastic founder or a set of founders who understand the product well, who bring a unique understanding to the industry or the product, which is multiples better than anybody else, investors will go out and invest after that. Also, most grounded founders will realize that 8, 9, 10 years is nowhere enough to build out a sustainable business. And especially in economies like ours, where a lot of regulation, a lot of reforms are still work in progress. You need at least a decade and a half. I mean, I read a few days back an interesting comparison to the half-life that radioactive materials have, right? So the rate at which you grow, the half-life of you going down is equivalent to that. So if you're going to grow crazily in 5 years, the probability of you going bust in the next 5 years is much higher. So investors will bet on startups, on founders who are grounded, who understand the problem uniquely, and who are in this for the long run, who want to build out a sustainable, profitable business, and not just go out and build out a business with the hope that they're bought out in 4 or 5 years. It could happen, but I don't think anybody can work with that assumption in mind. That is a surefire way to unicorns, valuations. That's a surefire way of not having a good outcome when markets turn, and markets will turn.
Very good, certainly. So, what would be your advice to aspiring entrepreneurs who are looking to venture into the Indian startup space, in the current circumstances?
So the reason why you're an entrepreneur is clearly you have a different personality, right? I mean, not everybody can be a entrepreneur. You have a certain personality. No matter how many times you get punched out, you'll get up and still give it another go. You're optimistic by nature. And at the same time, you are, I mean, you are not only laser sharp focused on whatever it is whatever it is that you're trying to build, but at the same time, you have a bird's eye view of what's happening around you. And startups in India have to understand that things have changed so dramatically in India. And I'm not talking about all the things that the government is doing, technology and what have you. What has happened over the last couple of years, and savvy founders will keep an eye out for that. China has gone and shot itself in its foot. Till about a couple of years back, they were firmly in bed with the Anglo-Saxon world, and the Anglo-Saxon world was looking at them as their next partner in growth. That's not going to happen any longer, right? So India is the last large frontier market that is left for all these big companies outside India. And it is probably, and it is the only market of that size, which is not inimical to democratic way of functioning, to laws that govern companies and countries, right? So a few years back when the US, the Anglo-Saxon world would have cast a wary eye, now they are firmly embrace with us, right? I mean, I can give an example of the Aero show, which I've been visiting for the last since whenever it started, and I have never seen the kind of engagement and the kind of top military brass that at a state-of-the-art aircraft, which was never shared outside their NATO allies and their other allies outside NATO. This is a change that Indian founders have to realize that it is going to be there at least with their generation, probably for keeps, right? And as a result of that, India is firmly part of the global supply chain. The China plus one, India still doesn't figure, but at some point, India will be the plus one in that China plus one strategy. And that is throwing enormous opportunities our way, right? The government is throwing everything it's got into manufacturing, is throwing everything it's got into electronics. They are going step by step, addressing all the big items that eat up our foreign exchange. So they are going after building out a semiconductor ecosystem. They're going out and building out a make in India export defense ecosystem. They are going out and building out an EV ecosystem. India is probably one of the first few countries that is talking about a hydrogen policy, hydrogen as a clean fuel, right? So all founders have to keep an eye on the ecosystem that they're operating in. I'm not saying go out and do a startup in these areas, but I'm sure if they realize this is what is happening, they will figure out an area which they have an understanding better than most, and they should jump on this. It's always better to get into a space where you have a tailwind rather than a headwind. As it is, so many things are loaded against you. The last thing you want is to be in a market that is not growing, or you want to be in a sector where the government and the rest of the world is not aligned, right? And the last point I'll make is we are definitely moving from the era of bytes to atoms. What I mean by that is till now, most of the guts and the glory have been eaten up by the software businesses. But the next stage of businesses are going to be these businesses that are built on atoms. By that, I mean the physical world, material science, drugs, pharmaceuticals, robotics, defense, aerospace. All these are areas that founders should definitely keep an keen eye on.
Very good, very good. So really very in-depth insights that we have provided, and certainly there are many opportunities which startups and entrepreneurs can look at. Okay, and the points that you have elaborated are very pertinent to the current market situations. So thanks a lot for your time. Thanks a lot for the insights that you have given to the audience. Thanks a lot.
Great. Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
For more updates from CXO TV, please like and subscribe to our channel.